Hey, welcome to this week's episode of Ask the Instructor. I'm John Kurtzman. The show is brought to you by the Tampa School of Real Estate. If you're thinking about starting or enhancing your real estate career, give us a call. The phone number is 813-928-0106. Again, that's 813-928-0106. You also check us out online at tampaschoolofrealestates.com. And now, why do you want to check those out? Because we're confident we're your best choice for a real estate school, for furthering your real estate education, for starting your real estate career, whatever it is you want to do. That's why we do this show every Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern Time. It's called Ask the Instructor, and this is our way of helping our students get a better grip on some of these more complex topics. We talk about a lot of math. We go through solving a bunch of different problems to really help make sure that you're in 100% shape for your exam, but also that you understand where these numbers come from. Now, what we're talking about today is called special assessments. So, special assessments. Now, if you guys have taken one of our classes, you probably know how much we emphasize being able to break down these key words here and knowing what these specific words mean, because they really help clue you in on what we're talking about. So, when we mention the special aspect, if you go to a doctor, if you go to your regular everyday doctor, that's a general doctor. General meaning a scope of ailments. Whereas if maybe you broke a bone or you have some sort of particular issue, maybe you're potentially having heart disease or something like that, you don't just see your general doctor, you also see a specialist. And what's the difference now between the general doctor and the specialist is that they focus in a specific. You can see how the special is very much like the word specific, and that's what we're talking about. It's a special, specific, one-time assessment. And what do we mean by an assessment? Well, you might also remember the word assessed. And assessed as it refers to assessed value. An assessed value is going to be what the tax assessor says your property is worth. So this is a specific tax, basically. It's a one-time tax. And now, where do these special assessments come into play? Where might you see a special assessment? Well, a lot of times this is going to be if you're taking your exam and trying to study and prepare for that, what you'll typically see is for paving a road. So let's go ahead and talk about what this is in a little bit more detail. So we broke down what it is. We know it's a one-time tax. So say we have this road going through a neighborhood here. And now this is a public road. It's a public road. A real easy way in the real world, if you want to tell the difference between a public road and a private road, and this doesn't work 100% of the time, but 99.9% of the time, this will really kind of clue you in on this, is the color of the sign. If it's a blue sign, that's typically a private road, as opposed to a green sign, this is a public road. So just a real quick thing, now that doesn't always work, but the general rule of thumb, at least here in Florida for most cases, is the green signs mean it's a public road. Now, if it's a private road, this is managed for the repaving of this by somebody else. But if this is a public road, this is the taxpayers that have to pay for the paving of this street. And so let's say we have some homes on this street. So we've got a lot here, lot here, lot here, another lot, another lot, another lot, another lot. So these are all homes that we have touching the street. And basically what happens when you get a special assessment, what we're trying to figure out here is how much it costs to pave your half of the street after the city contributes any amount that they're going to pay for this. So we don't care about the whole street. We only care about the half of the street that's in front of our particular property. And that's all we're trying to find out the value for, is just the value of how much it's going to cost to repave the street after we take out the city cost, because the city is going to pay for a portion of this in most cases. And then also for just dealing with our half of the street, because that's all we care about is just our half of the street. We don't worry about our people across the street. We're only worried about our half. And now if you notice the stuff here with the other side of the street, you know that this doesn't line up, but each person has their own assessment that they'll get based on the frontage they have of their property. So you don't have to worry about the other owners and don't have to worry about how it's broken up, because you might have a very large lot and maybe there's 10 people that are across the street from you because you have a huge lot that has a ton of frontage. That doesn't matter for the special assessment because we're just focused on this red aspect here. What's the part that's in front of our property directly? And that's all really we're just trying to find, is just this little area in front. So don't worry about this. All the rest of this stuff is irrelevant. We just worry about what's directly in front of our property, how much that's going to cost per foot, and then how much the city's going to pay out of all that. So in order to calculate this out, what you need to do is find some key pieces of information. And the information we need, and this is going to be given to you in the exam, or if you're doing this in the real world, you're going to have to go looking for this information, but it should be pretty easy to find. Number one, we need the frontage of the property. So that's the first thing, is we need how many feet of frontage. Now, feet is a linear measurement as opposed to square feet. Square feet is a measurement of area. So square footage would tell us how big the entire lot is, how not only how wide but also how deep and how much footage we have here. Now, footage, on the other hand, just frontage feet, this is a linear measurement. So area would be this entire thing. Frontage is just how much of the property is on the front, how much of it actually touches the street. So that's going to be information that you need to find. Let's say in this case it's 100. So let's say we have 100 feet of frontage. Now that's the one piece of information that you need. You know how much frontage, because now that we know how much frontage we have, we could start kind of calculating out here what the assessment's going to be. Now typically with these assessments, they're not done by square footage here. And that's why we just care about the frontage area here, because these aren't done usually by square footage. They're typically done by linear footage. And the reason being, and why they do this based on linear footage rather than square footage, is because the street doesn't really change for its width. It always has to be a certain amount of width for cars on both sides. It might kind of deviate slightly here and there, but for the most part, it's about the same footage. And when the construction company comes in to charge for this, or at least give a quote for how much it's going to cost to pave this street, they're going based off of the linear foot. So 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot. So that's what they charge. So there's a price per foot. And let's say that that price per foot is $30. And remember, that's per linear foot. And that's what all we're doing with here is about 100 feet. So you can already see, to figure out what the cost is for in front of our property, all we're going to do now is take the 30 feet, multiply it by our 100 feet that we have. And then when you just do some simple calculations, you'll see that that's $3,000. Now, $3,000, this isn't going to be the owner's special assessment yet. We're on the right track. We're working towards the special assessment, but we're not at the special assessment yet. But we're getting there. Now, let's talk about what this number represents, this $3,000. So the $3,000, this is for the entire street. So this only just isn't our half, but it's both halves of the street. Which we don't want both halves. So we'll always have to remember that we have to divide this now by 2. Because we just want the cost of our half of the street. So we divide that by 2, and we end up getting $1,500 being the total cost of paving the street. Now, the one other thing you have to factor in here, and this, again, if you're taking the exam, is going to be based in your questions. It's going to be part of the questions. This is going to be how much the city or the county or whatever local municipality is in charge of repaving the street, how much they're contributing to this. Now, sometimes they might say, okay, yeah, you have to pay the whole bill. But typically, there's some sort of contribution made on the city's part or the county's part or whoever's in charge of this street here. And that might only be, let's say it's 20%. So let's say if this is in the city, and the city only agrees to pay for 20% of this paving cost. So if the city's only paying for this 20% of the paving cost here, we have to figure out what the remaining amount for the owners is. So if our 100%, this is the total. So 100% is the total. We subtract out what the city's paying, and what we're left with is 80%, and that's called the owner's share. So we take our 100%, we subtract out the 20%, and what we're left with is our 80% owner share. And now, in order to figure out what the owner's special assessment is, remember, we don't care what the city's paying because a special assessment is a one-time tax that's levied against a homeowner. So what we're trying to do is find this out in terms of the homeowner, and this is what you'd normally care about in the real world if you're trying to do this calculation and double-check this math and see how this is came out, make sure that the city isn't cheating you out of any of your tax dollars. So the whole purpose of this, however, is defined for the homeowner and how much the homeowner has to pay. So we don't care about the city. We need to know that to figure out that the owner's share is 80%, but all we have to do now is take our $1,500 and multiply it by 80%, which is 0.80. And we're going to put that in our handy dandy calculator, 1,500 times 0.8, and we end up getting $1,200. $1,200, which is 80% of $1,500. So this simple calculation now tells us that this little half of street in front of our property is going to cost us $1,200 in the form of a special assessment. So again, all we were caring about was the red part of this street right here. So just that little part, our half of the street, the city was paying for 20%, so we took out that 20% and what the remaining 80% that the owner had to pay for their half of the street ended up being $1,200. So that's how this all works out with a special assessment on this is called an interior lot. When we come back after this next break, we're actually going to do one based on a corner lot. It gets a little bit trickier with the corner lot, but if you figured this out, it's just a little bit more you need to know to figure out for this for a corner lot. So stay with us. I'm John Carismo, and you're watching Ask the Instructor.
When you look back on your real estate career, you'll remember the moment you decided to begin this journey. The moment when you finally decided it was time for change. The moment when you decided it was time to take charge. The moment that changed the direction of your life forever. Now is that moment. Need help preparing for your exam? We've got you covered. Join us for a structured weekend review class where we'll cover the topics you need to know to pass your class and state exams. Class sizes are limited, so reserve your seat now by calling 813-928-0106 or registering online at tampaschoolofrealestate.com. Have you been thinking about starting a real estate career but are struggling to find the time to go back to school? Allow us to introduce our revolutionary online course platform. At the Tampa School of Real Estate, we have used our years of education experience and student feedback to bring you the finest and best online course. Visit tampaschoolofrealestate.com. That's tampaschoolofrealestate.com, or call us at 813-928-0106. That's 813-928-0106 to learn more and register for our online course today. After the show, be sure to visit tampaschoolofrealestate.com. Again, that's tampaschoolofrealestate.com, where you'll find all the information you need to start your career in real estate. Also, be sure to check out our Success Center, where you'll find helpful tips for building a successful real estate career.
Hey, if you liked the show today, be sure to hit like and subscribe and post your comments. Thanks so much for watching. Hey, welcome back to this week's episode of Ask the Instructor. I'm John Carismo, and the show is brought to you by the Tampa School of Real Estate. Every Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern Time, we come to you to help you understand and further develop your skills in solving problems like this and really be able to kind of bang out this math, whether it's on the exam or whether this presents you in the real world where you have to understand what some of these facts and figures mean. Really great stuff if you're looking to get into investment side of real estate and everything, to make sure that you're very well informed, not only about just some of the basic details about investing in real estate, but also some of the more intricate things that such as a special assessment, so you at least know what it is and how this could be calculated to what it could potentially be. But ultimately, this is something, it doesn't come up every day in the real world, but definitely something very likely you'll see on your exam that you'll want to know how to calculate, because it's some easy calculations when you know how they're done. Now, before we went on break, we figured out calculating a special assessment, meaning a one-time tax for repaving a street on an interior lot. So let's talk about what we're talking about here when we mention an interior lot. So let's give us two different streets here. So we have our first street, and let's say this other street tees right into this. So you can see our two streets that we have here. This would be known as an interior lot. This would be known as a corner lot. Now, the reason why you want to understand what the corner lot is, because the special assessment is going to be very different. With here, you notice we just have this one bit of frontage. Just this one little bit of frontage here on the property. With a corner lot, however, you have frontage here as well as frontage here. So really, there's two different pieces of frontage that you have on this property. So in order to figure out the special assessment for a property like this, we're not just dealing with this side here, but also this side here when we're dealing with a corner lot. And you might ask, what about this area right here? Well, that area is typically taken care of through common area maintenance and whatnot, and that might be part of what the city is contributing, might cover some of that stuff as well. But as far as an exam question might look for this, you'd really just be looking at these two sides of it right here. How much frontage we have here and how much frontage we have here, and then based on that frontage, what our special assessment is going to be. So in order to solve this one, just like the last one, we need some basic information. We need to know what the dimensions are of the particular property. So let's say it's 200 feet on one side and 180 feet on this side. Now again, all we're concerned with in doing a special assessment is the frontage of the property. We're not basing this on the square footage of the property, because you might know you could do length by width, 200 times 180, and figure out the square footage of this lot and know how big this lot is in terms of area. But we're not concerned with area. We're concerned with the frontage. The perimeter is the geometry term that they would use for this here. And ultimately what we're dealing with is 200 plus 180. That would be our total perimeter that touches the street, our total street frontage of this property. So what we would do is add together our 200 and our 180, and we end up with 380 frontage feet. So between the two of these, we have 380 feet of frontage, 200 here, another 180 there, so 380 feet of frontage on this particular property. So now as far as solving this goes, what we need to look at this point, again, is going to be our cost. So let's now say it cost $50 per foot. So we have $50 per foot. Let's say that the city's paying for 30% of this. And that's about all the numbers that we need, other than the 200 by 180 for the lot size. But we already have that down there. So with those three pieces of information, we can figure out what the assessment's going to be. Now again, the math for this really isn't going to be too difficult. We're going to take our 50 feet, multiply it by our total frontage feet, which we figured to be 380. That was our perimeter, our 200 plus 180. So 50 feet times 380 feet, $50 per foot times 380 feet, ends up giving us Yeah, I had to double check that math because this is an expensive project here. $19,000. So you can see how this is significantly higher. Number one, because we have a lot more frontage of the property. And number two, the cost is almost double from the last one. So not only are we almost quadrupling our frontage, we're almost doubling the cost. So we went from having a total assessment of about $3,000 to now a total assessment of $19,000. But the good news is if you're the owner of this corner lot, you're not paying for that full $19,000. we have to take out the 30% that the city's paying. So if the city's paying 30%, that's going to leave 70% as the owner's share. So we're going to take this 19,000 and multiply it by 0.70. And we're going to end up with $13,300. But now this $13,300, this is our total cost. So what we're dealing with is the $13,300. Again, we'll put this in the green here. Is the entire street, which, like we just talked about, we always assume that there's going to be somebody on the other side of the street. And this is really important if you're studying this for your exam. When you're looking at this on your exam, it won't ever tell you that there's somebody on the other side of the street. Now, it may tell you. I don't want to say it'll never tell you. But chances are they're going to try to pull a fast one on you and see if you could remember that you always have to divide by 2 to figure out what just your half of the street is. Remember, we're just looking at this blue section here, the portion that's directly in front of your corner lot. So what we need to do is now again divide this by 2. So we'll divide this by 2, and then we're going to end up with our total assessment being $6,650. So now that seems a lot more manageable as a cost. I mean, sure, it's not $1,200. It's definitely a lot more than the $1,200, but coming down from $19,000, that's a big drop off. And a big part of that comes from dividing this into half, because we went from $13,300 down to $6,650, which that gives us the total between the two of these. And another way you could have done this, because with the math, there's multiple ways to solve these. I mean, you can see we did the steps a little bit different here. We took out the city's portion first before dividing it by 2. But due to order of operations, you could really reverse those two either which way, so both of them would be correct. Another way you could have done this is first figuring out this 200, figuring out what that would amount to. Maybe that would end up being $3,650, and then figuring out this one over here, and maybe that one was $3,000. And then you could just add the two of those together, and you'd still end up with $6,650. So if you did the 200 times 50 times 70% divided by 2 and got that number. So let's, just to illustrate this point here, let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and take 200 times $50 times 0.7 divided by 2. And you can see once you kind of have this whole system down and you understand how it is you're working with this math, this becomes a very simple calculation of just really 3 different computations that you're doing here. You're doing the frontage feet, 200, times the cost per foot of $50, times the 70% divided by 2, and you end up with $3,500. So this piece of frontage here is $3,500. Now we still have to figure out the other one. We can't leave this one out. So what we're doing here now is just 180 times 50 times 0.7 divided by 2. So again, we're just doing the number of feet, which is 180, times the $50 per foot, times the 70%, which is the owner's share, and then finally just dividing that by 2. And we put that all in our calculator, 180 times 50 times 70% divided by 2 gives us 3,150. So between the two of these then, the 3,500 plus the 3,150, we end up again with our 6,650. So multiple ways you could solve this type of problem. You could go through and do it like the first way, like we did, and just add these together, because ultimately the only thing we're doing differently with the corner lot versus the interior lot is that we're having to add in. We're also adding in this other side. So we could either add it at the beginning, add the 200 plus the 180 and come up with 380, and then the math, we just do this whole long string of math once, or you could do the long string of math twice and just do the adding in the end. Either which way, you're going to get the same answer of $6,650. So that's a special assessment on a corner lot. Now when we come back from this next break, we're going to do another special assessment, but it's going to be our trickiest one yet, so stay with us. I'm John Corsmo. You're watching Ask the Instructor.
When you look back on your real estate career, you'll remember the moment you decided to begin this journey. The moment when you finally decided it was time for change. The moment when you decided it was time to take charge. The moment that changed the direction of your life forever. Now is that moment. Need help preparing for your exam? We've got you covered. Join us for a structured weekend review class where we'll cover the topics you need to know to pass your class and state exams. Class sizes are limited, so reserve your seat now by calling 813-928-0106 or registering online at tampaschoolofrealestate.com. Have you been thinking about starting a real estate career but are struggling to find the time to go back to school? Allow us to introduce our revolutionary online course platform. At the Tampa School of Real Estate, we have used our years of education experience and student feedback to bring you the finest and best online course. Visit tampaschoolofrealestate.com. That's tampaschoolofrealestate.com, or call us at 813-928-0106. That's 813-928-0106 to learn more and register for our online course today. After the show, be sure to visit tampaschoolofrealestate.com. Again, that's tampaschoolofrealestate.com, where you'll find all the information you need to start your career in real estate. Also, be sure to check out our Success Center, where you'll find helpful tips for building a successful real estate career.
Hey, if you liked the show today, be sure to hit like and subscribe and post your comments. Thanks so much for watching. Hey, welcome back to this week's episode of Ask the Instructor. Every Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern Time, we come to you to help you prepare for the exam, to help you better understand the real estate industry, and overall just hopefully learn something here, even if it doesn't apply directly in real estate. We talk about a lot of stuff. Essentially with breaking down that words at the beginning where we did the special assessment and what that particularly means and how you could look at that word and understand it. And that's a skill not just in real estate, but anywhere. If you understand the true meaning of words, you're really going to get a lot more out of them. So today we're talking about special assessments, which the special assessments, these are one-time taxes, typically for repaving a road. It could be for repaving a sidewalk, but some sort of linear measurement that you're going off of. And what we did first was figure this out for an interior lot. What we did next was we figured this out for a corner lot because we had the two streets here and we had the two sides of frontage, and that's what we just did in this last one. But now, if you're using these videos to help prepare and study for your exam's not going to have anything graphical or visual on it. It's all text-based and word-based for the exam. So you won't see a picture like this. You're free to draw something like this out. You have plenty of scratch paper. You won't have as many colors as I do here. You'll pretty much just have your one black marker or whatever it is that they're giving you at the test center. But you won't be able to see this without drawing this out or recreating something like this from memory. And for the most part, this is really just to kind of educate and learn this stuff here. So let's go ahead and try one of these, as you may see it on the exam. Now, in the exam, it's going to give you a more wordier question, and I'm not going to give you a whole kind of wordy question to break up, but what I will give you are the important aspects of the property. And if you have these important aspects, and you'll see how we're going to be able to do this without even having to draw this out. So first and foremost, we have the size of the lot. So our lot is, let's say, 150 by 120. So 150 feet by 120 feet. The cost of paving is, let's say, it's $33 a foot. The city pays, let's say, 25%. So the city's paying for 25% of this paving cost. And one more thing here, it's also an interior lot. And ultimately, question is, what is the assessment? So we have a lot that's 150 feet by 120 feet. The cost of paving per foot is $33. The city pays 25%. It's an interior lot. What is the assessment of the property? Now, I said we're going to solve this one without drawing anything out here, but you're probably wondering, it's an interior lot. Why are there two different measurements up here? If this is an interior lot, why do we have two different measurements? If this is a corner lot, we have two corners. We have 150 feet and we have 120 feet. So that would make sense. Now, it's not just corner lots that have two dimensions. All lots have two dimensions. We just don't use the second dimension. The second dimension is the depth of the property. So what you need to remember, and this is something that's not going to tell you on the exam. It's not going to tell you which one of these numbers. It could. Again, it could. I like to say the exam's not going to do this, the exam's not going to do that, but I don't know the exam. I don't know whether they or not they maybe do work something like that in there, but I'd probably put money on it that they're not going to tell you which one of these is the front number, the frontage number. So what you need to remember is first equals front. Both of them start with F's. Our first number is our frontage number. And you can see that with what I kind of drew out right here. This would be our street. The 150 feet, that's our frontage. The 120 we don't care about. If it was a corner lot, we wouldn't need to use that second dimension. But the second dimension is the depth of the property. So if it doesn't specify in there, which I don't think it will, you're going to have to remember the first number is our front number. Remember, first number is the frontage number. So again, let's go ahead and solve this now. And again, if you want to draw this out, it is a little time consuming to draw that all out, but if that helps you and that's going to ensure you're going to get the right answer, you probably have more than enough time to do that. But let's go ahead and do this one without drawing anything, without doing any sort of picture. So what we need to remember now, and we'll do it kind of more formula-based for you people that aren't visual learners, this might make a little bit more sense to you here. So what we do is the frontage times cost per foot times the owner's share, and then finally all that divided by 2. So that's really what the formula would kind of look like with this, and we could have put divided by 2 at the very end here, but simply ran out of room. So either way you want to do it, it's the frontage times the cost per foot times the owner's share, all divided by 2. And you can remember this formula as well, because, I mean, this isn't a very difficult formula, but you match that up with all the other formulas you need to know for the exam, or just in general when you're trying to figure out calculations of this. You get a lot better retention usually with the understanding of this material. But hey, some people do get better retention from just memorizing the formula alone. So that would be the formula you need to solve this type of question. So if we're going to plug in our numbers for this here, we have our frontage, which we already determined. Remember, the first number is our front number. So we have 150 feet of frontage. The cost of paving is $33 a square foot, or not a square foot, a linear foot. The city is paying for 25%. Now, if the city is paying for 25%, do we care about what the city is paying for? No, this isn't the city's assessment we're trying to figure out. Especially if this is going to be on the exam, it might even say something just as simple as what is the assessment. If they want to be easier on you, they could say what is the owner's assessment, but typically they'll give you the city share, and they'll, again, use this as another way to kind of trick you, but you're not going to fall victim to the tricks. Now, this exam is very easy to pass if you know the material. If you know this formula, if you know how to solve this type of question, it's very easy, and you have to know it 100% and not have a shadow of a doubt, because they will try to trick you. They're going to hope they could kind of strike down your confidence and make you question yourself, well, do I care about the city share or the owner's share? But it's the owner's assessment that we're looking at right here. We don't care about the city share, how much they're having to pay. We're caring about the owner's assessment. So if the city's paying for 75%, that means the owners are 75%. City is 25%, the owner's share is 75%. So what we're going to do now is multiply by 0.75. And the last thing, and this is the, notice it didn't say anything here in this information I gave you from the problem that it would have given you. And I didn't leave this out. The question's going to leave this out on purpose. They typically won't tell you there's another owner on the other side of the street. Again, they may do that, but chances are they'll try to make it a little bit more difficult on you, and they'll just, excuse me, expect you to remember that there's another owner on the other side of the street. So our final bit of calculation we're doing here is dividing by 2. And when we take our 150 frontage feet, multiply it by $33 per foot, multiply that by 75% of the owner share, and divide that all by 2 for our side of the property, we put that in our handy-dandy little calculator, and we're going to end up with 150 times 33 times 0.75 divided by 2, a total assessment of $1,856.25. And notice when we went through and solved this here, we just lined it all up like this. You don't have to go through step by step and do 150 times 33 equals what, times 75% equals what, divided by 2. That does help if you're trying to kind of figure your way through these types of problems if you don't have this down pat as much. But once you have this down pat and you know this, you have to multiply this by this by this by this by this, you can really come up with a short little formula of just like this: the frontage times the cost per foot times the owner share divided by 2 gives us our special assessment. Now, the problem with memorizing a formula like this as opposed to kind of understanding the concept, that's why I went through and did all the pictures and the drawings first, is because when you understand the concept, if this is an interior lot versus a corner lot, you know how you have to manipulate this formula. The formula isn't always the same. So an interior lot versus a corner lot, you'd have an extra step with the corner lot, and really the formula would be one side plus the other side, take those two together, and then multiply by $33. If you understand the concept and how I laid that out with the drawing in the last 2 segments, this makes sense and this comes quickly with it here, but it's always good to visualize this and think about this visually, because that'll help you when you're trying to get the right answer on the exam, or you're trying to get the right answer for this in the real world of trying to figure out what this ends up adding up to. So let's try one more of this, and let's do this exact same problem. But let's say now it's a corner lot. So if this were now a corner lot as opposed to an interior lot, the interior lot we only care about the first number because the first number is the front number. But if it is a corner lot, we need both of these numbers, but we're not multiplying as it gives you in the question. Typically it'll say a lot is 150 feet by 120 feet, and they'll list it just like this, 150 x 120. And if they do that, if you don't know what you're doing here, you might be inclined to look at that and say, oh, I have to multiply the two of these together to get the total number. And that's not true. And they put that little x in there instead of just saying one side is 150 and the other side is 120. Again, is another way to kind of trip you up with this stuff. But hey, if you know your stuff, if you know how to solve these problems and you've gone through this a couple of times, it'll be up here and you won't fall victim to the little tricks that they try to throw in the exam on you. So what we have to do with this one, the corner lot, what's going to be different is dimension 1. We'll call it D1 plus D2 are 2 dimensions. We're going to multiply that by the cost per foot. We're going to multiply that by the owner share. And then we're going to divide it by 2. Because again, even with a corner lot, unless it says otherwise, you always assume there's somebody on the other side of the street paying for their half of the assessment, their half of the street. We're not worrying about our half, or only worrying about our half of the street, not their half of the street. So if we're going to plug these all in, we can go ahead and add the two of these together. 150 plus 120. And now notice I put the parentheses around this because the key thing here with all this stuff is you have to add these together first. And the 150 plus the 120, that's going to add up to be, what is that, 270? So we have a total of 270 feet. So that you have to do first and foremost, add the two sides together on this particular property. And then we could go through and multiply it by the cost per foot of $33, multiply it by the owner share, which was again 75%, and then divide it by 2 because we only care about our half of the street. And when we put that all in our calculator, 270 times 33 times 0.75 divided by 2, we end up with an assessment of $3,341.25. So that's how you tackle this problem if that one word of interior lot became corner lot. So that's why it's very important when you're going through the exam, when you're reading these questions, when you're trying to study for this, you pay attention to the details. Not only is the details important in the exam, they're important in the real world as well. The details can completely change something. A corner lot versus an interior lot, it's only one word in the question, but that little detail changes everything. And you might think the test makers are just being mean, trying to trip you up and put such an emphasis on the details. But in the real world, when you're working in real estate, the details are of the utmost importance. Because one word in a contract can change the entire meaning of a contract, just like one word in the question changes the entire process of the question. And not by so much, just that little minor detail that we have to add the two of those together. But we end up with a lot larger assessment. Before it was, what, $1,800? Now it was $3,341.25. That's a big difference dollar amount wise. I mean, we're almost double what the cost would be of just that 150-foot side of the property. So when we come back, we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of a bonus since we still have some extra time today. If you guys are watching, if you have questions, put them in the chat and we'll try to tackle those as well. But we're doing a bonus on the Save Our Home Amendment, another little bit of math calculation you might need to know. So stay with us. I'm John Chrismo. You're watching Ask the Instructor.
When you look back on your real estate career, you'll remember the moment you decided to begin this journey. The moment when you finally decided it was time for change. The moment when you decided it was time to take charge. The moment that changed the direction of your life forever. Now is that moment. Need help preparing for your exam? We've got you covered. Join us for a structured weekend review class where we'll cover the topics you need to know to pass your class and state exams. Class sizes are limited, so reserve your seat now by calling 813-928-0106 or registering online at tampaschoolofrealestate.com. Have you been thinking about starting a real estate career but are struggling to find the time to go back to school? Allow us to introduce our revolutionary online course platform. At the Tampa School of Real Estate, we have used our years of education experience and student feedback to bring you the finest and best online course. Visit tampaschoolofrealestate.com. That's tampaschoolofrealestate.com, or call us at 813-928-0106. That's 813-928-0106 to learn more and register for our online course today. After the show, be sure to visit tampaschoolofrealestate.com. Again, that's tampaschoolofrealestate.com, where you'll find all the information you need to start your career in real estate. Also, be sure to check out our Success Center, where you'll find helpful tips for building a successful real estate career.
Hey, if you liked the show today, be sure to hit like and subscribe and post your comments. Thanks so much for watching. Hey, welcome back to this week's episode of Ask the Instructor. I'm John Chrismo, and this show is brought to you by the Tampa School of Real Estate. If you're thinking about starting or enhancing your real estate career, give us a call at 813-928-0106. Again, that's 813-928-0106. Also, check us out online at tampaschoolofrealestate.com. Now, today's episode was all about special assessments, but we've done probably most of the special assessment stuff that you could possibly need to know. So we have a little bit of extra time today. A little bit of a bonus session we'll do is on the Save Our Home Amendment. So the Save Our Home Amendment was created literally to save people's homes. And that's why they call it the Save Our Home Amendment. Amendment to the Florida Constitution, so it was a law that was added in, and again, this is called the Save Our Home. So with the Save Our Home Amendment, if this is a homesteaded property, and that's the key thing with this here, is this is a homesteaded property. In Florida, there's a lot of protection for your homesteaded property because this is the property that you claim as your homestead. If you've heard that term before, homestead, it's really just that first part that's important in the home. you're allowed to have one homestead, aka one home, that's protected and has extra protections under Florida law that you wouldn't have with other types of property, whether it's an investment property, a second home, whatever it may be. So the Save Our Home Amendment was designed to protect a homesteaded property from increase in taxation. And the maximum year over year, so maximum year over year increase, is just 3%. So the Save Our Home Amendment caps how much they can change the assessed value of a property by 3%. Now, it's not always 3%. It's also whatever the CPI changes, the Consumer Price Index. So if the CPI changes, that's going to be what the amount is unless that amount exceeds 3%. If the Consumer Price Index only goes up 1%, the only amount of increase is just going to be a 1% increase in your taxes. So it depends on what that CPI does. If the CPI is skyrocketing and it goes up 5, 6, 7%, you're going to be capped out at 3% for your homesteaded property. Now what this means for your homestead is it's just a 3% increase in your assessed value for your taxes, which everything holding standard and the same, your taxes, if the millage rates don't change, will only be able to go up a maximum of 3% year over year. And you can think of how huge that could be and how much money that could save you, especially if you've lived in a property for quite some time. Now, if this is a second home, if this is an investment property, if this is not your registered homestead, maybe it is your main home, but you never claimed it as a homestead, you're not going to get this benefit of the Save Our Home Amendment. And if the Consumer Price Index goes up 10%, your property assessment is likely to go up 10%. It could go up even more than that. There's nothing protecting it or holding it back from changes in assessed value. So maybe the Consumer Price Index doesn't even go up that high, but the market in your area just skyrockets and all of a sudden your property is worth so much more. And that's great when you go to sell the property or if you want to refinance the property or something like that. But for taxes, that's the worst thing that could happen is that the value of your property increases because that just means that you're paying more taxes. And now, yes, you do get deduction off of your income taxes for property taxes, so it doesn't necessarily save you money, I would say. I mean, it's a savings kind of where you look at it. It's just you're paying the local government instead of the federal government for your taxes at that point. So let's go ahead and go through and do some solving for this. So again, it's the CPI change, but it's capped at 3%. Those are the two key things you want to know for the Save Our Home Amendment in order to figure this out. The CPI change, and then it's capped at 3%. So what you'll have to solve something like this, and this is a great thing to know as well, even not just for the exam, but also in the real world. This is much simpler math than what we're just doing with the special assessments, but this is a great thing to tell people about that are maybe new home buyers or that are moving into Florida, because this is a protection that Florida has. The homestead in general pales in comparison of other states with Florida. Florida is such a strong homestead state compared to other states, and there's a lot of benefits that people moving to Florida or people that are just new home buyers might not know. So this is a great thing to help show potential homeowners and new first-time buyers and whatnot the benefits of owning a home. Because one of these big benefits is the homestead protection. And that caps out, because one of the objections you might get from somebody thinking about buying a home is, okay, well, what about the property taxes? Where I'm renting right now, I don't have to pay property taxes. Or in this state, the property taxes were way up here. And yeah, the Florida property taxes, I mean, they're not record low or anything like that. But, I mean, in comparison with things, this Save Our Home Amendment is great. Because let's say the property is assessed at $100,000. So property is assessed at $100,000. The CPI change is, let's say, 7%. So the market's just going out of control. The CPI goes up 7%. So with some quick math, and you could probably do this in your head already, you're probably seeing where we're going with this. At 7%, that would mean if this is not a homesteaded property, that means our property could go up $7,000. 7% of $100,000 is $7,000. Or where the assessor could go up 10% if they deem fit for the property. This basically means nothing if it's not a homesteaded property. But if this is a homesteaded property, we're not concerned about the 7% because we know the max is only 3% that it could go up year over year. So if it goes up that 3%, I'm just going to multiply this by 0.03, and a real quick trick you could do is times 1.03, and you're actually going to end up with $103,000. So even if the consumer price index is skyrocketing like that, going up 7%, it caps it out at 3%. The max it could go over year is just 3%. So you could go from 100,000 down to 103,000, or I should say up to 103,000. But that's it, not a penny more. Caps out absolutely at 3%. Now let's do another one of these here. Let's say it's a little bit slower year for the economy, and maybe the consumer price index only goes up 1%. So if the consumer price index goes up 1%, what that means for you as a homeowner, as a property taxpayer, is that your assessed value, now again, if this is your homesteaded property, this only applies for homesteads. It does not apply for second homes, does not apply for investment properties. All you have to do is take the 100,000, multiply by 1.01, or multiply it by 1%, and you'll get 1,000, add that back into 100,000, but you're going to end up getting $101,000. So the maximum increase, your property go up. And now again, if this is homesteaded, this entirely makes anything happening in your local market irrelevant. Now the consumer price index and what's going on in your market usually kind of follow about the same trend, but maybe the local market is booming, but the consumer price index doesn't go up that much. You could have your property maybe being worth $200,000, but with the Save Our Home Amendment, again, if you filed for the homestead and you're claiming this as your homestead, the maximum it could go up if that CPI only goes up 1%. Is just $101,000. So that does save a ton of money, because let's say if this wasn't a homesteaded property and maybe the market went up, again, the CPI doesn't matter. So instead of $100,000, you could end up at $200,000 because maybe the assessor is like, oh yeah, this market definitely went up. It's definitely worth a lot more. Congratulations, your home is worth more. Here's your bill for your extended tax payment that you have now. So this really helps out a lot, because now we're just looking at basically a 1% increase. If the millage rate stayed the same, just a 1% increase in our property taxes, which that could help you save your home. Because if the assessed value doubled, and maybe that's due because you bought property in a great market, and maybe you didn't even have the intention to buy property in a great market. Maybe that's not even what you're thinking about. Everybody's typically thinking about speculating how much they could sell their house for, and they want to make a good investment. But maybe you weren't even thinking about that, or that wasn't top of mind. You were mainly concerned with finding a great house for your family, for your kids, for your wife, for your husband, whatever it may be, and you didn't really care so much about the resale because you're planning on living there 10, 15, 20 years. And if the assessed value maybe just so happens that the neighborhood around you picked a great neighborhood, and all of a sudden there's a much higher demand for that neighborhood, and that price and the market value of the neighborhood goes up. If this wasn't a homestead, you could go from 100,000 to 200,000 to 300,000, or whatever it may be, and have double, triple, quadruple the taxes from when you initially got in there, which that'd be losing your home if you don't pay your taxes, because it's just like you could get foreclosed on from the bank for not paying your mortgage. You get foreclosed on by the local taxing authority for not paying your property taxes. A little bit different of a process going through that there, but it could still happen. But with the Save Our Home Amendment, it protects homesteaded property, protects homeowners and their primary residents from excessive taxation, or excessive increases in taxation, I should say. So that's the Save Our Home Amendment. And that's a good little tidbit to know, not just for your exam, because this is also potential exam stuff as well, but this is great information to have for home buyers, whether, like I said, they're first-time home buyers, or people that are, as I said, maybe new to the state, or who knows, maybe even someone who's never even claimed the homestead. They don't know all these benefits of the homestead property and whatnot. It's your job as a real estate professional to be knowledgeable and to advise them in a knowledgeable way to make sure that they're making smart decisions and they're using their money the best. Not only is it the ethical thing to do, it's something that's going to be great if you want return business. If you want to build a lifelong business around real estate, giving them information such as this. Now, the special assessments, that's not something typically going to come up. It's good to have that information if you ever need it, but this is something that might come up in a lot more daily basis. Really, it's a potential piece of information they might be interested in knowing it if they are all worried about the property taxes on the property. And, do you think the property taxes are going to go up? Well, it's like, I can't tell you whether or not the property taxes are going to go up, but I can tell you if you claim this as your homestead, the maximum could go up next year is just 3%. So that's huge, and that's definitely something that would reassure them. And unless they change the Save Our Home law, that's what the cap is 3%. So you're not defrauding them or giving them any misleading information or anything like that. And yeah, you can't predict whether or not the property taxes go up, but if this is homesteaded, the max it can go up is just 3%. So like I said, that's a great little tidbit of information you could use for all of your home buyers. Great stuff for you guys that stuck around to the end of the broadcast today. So hopefully you got some good stuff to take away from this, whether it's the stuff you need for your exam or the stuff to help better serve your clients. I hope it was a great help to you. I'm John Caruso, and remember to tune in next week at Wednesday, 12 noon for next week's episode of Ask the Instructor. We'll be doing same type of deal here, going through solving some problems, better understanding real estate industry. But now, hey, maybe if you're trying to better prepare yourself for growing and jump-starting your business as opposed to preparing for the exam, that's where you got to come and tune in to us at Friday at 12 noon. Same channel, tampaschoolofrealestate.com/success, our YouTube, our Facebook, all these different places. You can find us 12 noon on Friday. We do State of Real Estate, and that's kind of like a mastermind session to help grow and enhance your real estate business, or just jumpstart your real estate business to kind of hit the ground running once you have your license. So make sure you check that out Friday, just 2 days from now, and we do that every Friday at 12 noon. But other than that, I will see you next Wednesday at 12 noon for Ask the Instructor. I'm John Caruso, and I hope you guys have enjoyed today's show.